Safety equipment is designed to save lives, obviously. Even a simple pair of safety glasses can keep you from permanent loss of sight. Earplugs keep you from losing your hearing, and many people use these devices on a regular basis. If you work in a dangerous field, you have even more safety equipment such as gas masks, eye wash stations, or even whole hazmat suits that keep you from suffering from injury or worse. Sometimes, though, all of the safety equipment in the world can't block the grip of death. The 2013 Yarnell Hill fire resulted in the greatest loss of the U.S. Fire Service since the 9/11 attacks, with 19 brave firefighters losing their lives trying to extinguish the blaze. The extent of the loss sparked in-depth discussions about the strategies used when fighting wildfires and future tactics that could potentially avoid such losses in the future. Shockingly, only one man from the team survived that day. 10 years on, in 2023, he shared his story and the deep impact that day had on him. The Yarnell Hill fire was ignited by a dry lightning strike on a ridge to the west of Yarnell, Arizona on June 28, 2013. Yarnell lies 80 miles or 130 kilometers from Phoenix and was home to less than 700 residents. A 2020 census shows that number has dropped further over the past 10 years. Yarnell hadn't had a wildfire in over 45 years, but the extreme drought, thick shrubbery, and above-average cured grass loadings meant the increased amount of dead grass created the perfect conditions for such a vicious fire to ignite. Increased wind speeds of 22 miles per hour on June 29th saw the fire expanding rapidly, with it growing overnight from around 300 to 500 acres to a massive 2,000 acres or 810 hectares. Hundreds of firefighters were battling various sections of the blaze, but it was the highly skilled crew, the Granite Mountain Hotshots, who found themselves in a deadly position on June 30th. 21-year-old Brendan McDonough was part of the 20-man crew. He was serving as a lookout when the fire threatened to overrun him. He radioed his team and told them what was happening. Brendan was told by the second-in-command, Jesse Steed, to evacuate his position for his own safety. Brendan had to hike out on foot, and on his journey came across Brian Frisbee, the superintendent of the Blue Ridge Hotshots, who had been following Brendan's communications with his captain. Brian and Brendan began moving the team's vehicles to a safer location, further out from the fire. It was while they were doing that the Granite Mountain Hotshots became entrapped. It was later discovered that the 19 members of the Hotshots deployed their fire shelters in a last-ditch attempt to survive the fire that raged around them. Fire shelters are foldable shelters made from aluminum foil, fiberglass, and woven silica. They unwrap sort of like a sleeping bag and provide protection for firefighters through short-lived grass fires. Unfortunately, these shelters cannot withstand direct contact with the flames. Instead, they work to repel heat of up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or almost 1,100 degrees Celsius for 1 minute and trap breathable air for the person inside. With the fire burning directly over the Granite Mountain Hotshots, they had no chance of survival. Brian Frisbee and members of the Blue Ridge Hotshots tried their best to rescue the trapped men but were forced back by the intense flames and heat from the fire. It was at approximately 4:42 p.m. that the fire overtook the Granite Mountain Hotshots. 2 hours later, while a helicopter flew overhead, police officer and paramedic Eric Tarr went to the site on foot. He found the bodies of the 19 members of the Granite Mountain Hotshots. Their names were Andrew Ashcraft, Robert Caldwell, Travis Carter, Dustin DeFord, Christopher McKenzie, Eric Marsh, Grant McKee, Sean Misner, Scott Norris, Wade Parker, John Person Jr., Anthony Rode, Jesse Steed, Joe Thurston, Travis Turbyfill, William Warnicki, Clayton Whitted, Kevin Wojciech, and Garrett Zupinger. The men ranged in age from just 21 to 43. The fire raged on into early July, with the scorching temperature of 101 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius not helping matters. By July 1st, the Yarnell Hill fire hadn't just doubled in size. It had quadrupled, now covering over 8,300 acres or 3,400 hectares. To put that into perspective, that's more than the combined size of 6,000 football fields. The residents of nearby Peoples Valley were ordered to evacuate as the Yarnell residents had done in the previous days. Despite 400-odd firefighters being on the front lines trying to control the blaze, it remained entirely out of control. By the next day, they had reached 8% containment of the fire, which also hadn't grown over the past 24 hours. That number was increased on July 3rd to 45% containment. Since there was no sign of the fire beginning to expand again, Peoples Valley residents were allowed to return to their homes on July 4th. Yarnell residents were allowed back on July 8th, and by July 10th, the Yarnell Hill fire was declared 100% contained. 127 buildings in Yarnell had been destroyed. Following the death of the 19 firefighters, Arizona Governor Jan Brewer issued a statement offering her condolences to the families of the fallen men. She said, quote, "This is as dark a day as I can remember." From June 30th to July 19th, flags were flown half-staff throughout Arizona to pay homage to the men. On July 2nd, a public memorial service was held at an indoor stadium in Prescott Valley. Over 3,000 people attended. Then Vice President Joe Biden, Arizona Governor Jan Brewer, and Brendan McDonough all spoke at the memorial 1 week later. Again, thousands of people attended to honor the fallen heroes. By July 4th, $800,000 had been raised for the families of the victims, showing the support from around the country. In the aftermath of the devastation, an investigation was launched to determine what led to the loss of the Granite Mountain Hotshots. The aim was to identify any shortcomings in firefighting protocols, procedures, or decisions made during the incident, in the hopes of avoiding such a tragedy in the future. The Arizona State Forestry Division led the investigation. A final report was released in September of 2013. It concluded that the Yarnell Hill fire showed extreme and unpredictable behavior. It spread rapidly and unpredictably due to the terrain, availability of dense dry brush, and weather conditions. There had been communication difficulties between the crews, with the official report stating, quote, "Although much communication occurred among crews throughout the day, few people understood Granite Mountain's intentions, movements, and location once they left the black. The team believes this is due to brief, informal, and vague radio transmissions and talk-arounds that can occur during wildland fire communications." Based on radio conversations, operations, and other resources had concluded the Granite Mountain IHC was located in the black, near the ridgetop where they had started that morning. This resulted in confusion about the crew's actual location at the time of the search and rescue. IHC is the acronym for Interagency Hotshot Crew. Having examined the scene, investigators also found the fire shelters may not have been deployed correctly or effectively in the cases of some men, and questions were raised about some of the decisions made by fire management members about the position of certain firefighting crews. The investigation brought much attention to firefighter safety, wildfire behavior prediction, communication protocols, and risk assessment in wildfire management. Major discussions were had following the incident focused on improving training for crews should they face similar situations in the future. In the end, though, the investigation made no insinuation that anything could have changed the tragic outcome of the day. It stated, quote, "The judgments and decisions of the incident management organizations managing this fire were reasonable. Firefighters performed within their scope of duty as defined by their respective organizations. The team found no indication of negligence, reckless actions, or violations of policy or protocol." In a 2023 interview with Morning Edition, Brendan McDonough revealed, quote, "For so long, I thought that the man that I was, June 29th, 2013, would never come back again, and I would never be better than that person, I didn't think it was okay to be happy and enjoy my life because they weren't here to live it, and that was tough. That was tough for a while. In the years following the incident, Brendan suffered from severe PTSD, which led him to alcohol in an effort to try to cope with the trauma. Showing immense inner strength, Brendan was able to pull himself out of that hole through therapy and his faith, learning to process what had happened and move forward with his life. Something that the brave firefighters who sacrificed themselves that day would likely want for anyone who has suffered trauma. They chose to put their life in danger to make others' lives better, and we can all honor them by living our lives to the fullest. Thanks for letting us tell you this sinister story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and hit like, rate it, or leave a comment. Join us next week when we'll take you somewhere sinister.